This is where we moved to when we left Richardson Avenue. That is the house where I used to live. In this area in the northeast Bronx on Wilder Avenue. We had a maple tree there in the front yard. And the neighbors have long since changed. We left here sometime around 1971 or 72. And over here at 4376 Wilder, this is where Mrs. Vigilo lived. Oh, I loved Mrs. Vigilo. She would have me come over and paint. She would pay me $2 an hour and then feed me lentil soup. Oh my God, I loved her lentil soup. It was the best. I think she was like well into her 90s at that time. And I loved it when she cooked for me. I would have painted for nothing, to tell you the truth. And around the block from here is where I went to high school, at Mount St. Michael. There it is, Mount St. Michael Academy. And, a good place. Very grateful I was able to go here. It's sort of interesting, so many stories. One that came to mind is at the top of those stairs, that little turret there's one on either side of the entrance. And those are bathrooms. And I used to work on the switchboard. I don't know, $2, $2.50. Everything was $2 an hour back then. And so I knew, the people there, and I'd answer the switchboard, and I would use those bathrooms. But most of the time during lunch hour, I would just walk by there and say, I just need to use the bathroom, and in I'd go, and I'd smoke a cigarette because I was smoking at that time. I would have been expelled for that on the spot. But somehow I got away with it. And then there was one day when the Dean of Discipline, Brother Charles Patrick, Dean of Discipline, scared of him. Charlie Pat, as we called him, but of course never to his face. Well, one day I am coming out of that bathroom and he's heading that way. And I don't know what made me say it, but I lied real fast. I said, "Oh, brother, that bathroom's not working. You better use the other one." "Oh, okay, thanks, Ray." Oh, jeez, I got the heck out of there. So, I was testing the waters, and it was here that in a lot of ways, many of the things that started to be stirred in me from my earlier experiences down on Richardson Avenue and as a younger kid. High school, especially an all-boys high school, I think there were 1,200 boys here at the time. It was confusing in a lot of ways, and it was hard to figure out how to fit in, but actually I did. I just kept busy. I was on everything and loved the school. I really did. The brothers were great. The religious order that taught here, they were questioning things. Thank God somebody was questioning things. It was the 1960s. For a long time thought about becoming a Marist brother. That I wasn't the only one struggling with my sexuality. I wish it was different back then. It wasn't. I wish people were talking about it so that some of the things that were going on in me, it wasn't just me, but that's the way it was. And so a lot of things stayed bottled up here in high school. And in my life, it was a full life. I did a lot of different things. I had a band, a lot of different activities. So there was a lot of good stuff to distract me, but there was this gnawing thing inside that kept telling me, boy, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. And in a lot of ways, I guess I was. Not now, but then, yeah. This is Nereid Avenue, number 16 bus. There's Wilder Avenue, where we passed a little while ago. And when we moved to Wilder Avenue while I was going to Mount St. Michael, but for the first 2 years, I think, my freshman and sophomore year, I commuted from Richardson Avenue to Murdoch Avenue, where the Mount was, and took the bus on those days, often, more than not. And then coming up here on the left is where I got busted by my father for buying fireworks. I don't know how I made the contact, but we used to buy what was called bricks of fireworks. There were 80 packs of fireworks in a brick. I think it was like $8 or something. Yeah, it was one of these buildings over here on the left. And I guess my father got wind of what I was doing, and coming out of there he was. Oh, that didn't go over well. Didn't go over well. Many things didn't go over well. But I will not say that was the last time I bought fireworks. I just figured out a way to do it. There's where the Knights of Columbus was. Believe it or not, I am what's called a third-degree Knight of Columbus from back in the day. Wakefield Council, 2922. And here's the L that ran behind the house on Richardson Avenue. It was actually right in the backyard. There was a great German deli down here called Otto's, had the best potato salad in the world. On White Plains Road is where Vinny's Pizza was. And pizza for 10 cents a slice. And then coming up here is Richardson Avenue. We lived at 4368 Richardson Avenue. That's Grandpa's house across the street. That's where we lived. And it was a good place. Good place. There was the yard. Oh, look at this. Garage is still there. We sat on the stoop a lot here. We sat on the stoop. We played. Hello. We played stoop ball off the stoop. We played scully cap on the street here and stick ball. And one of the older guys, we ended up fooling around a little bit. I was maybe 11, 12 or something. And it began something that was really interesting because it was incredibly forbidden, terribly wrong, unbelievably exciting. And so I became sexualized at a pretty young age. And we figured out ways to fool around every now and then. That was pretty interesting because suddenly I had something going on that I don't think a lot of other people did, and I didn't know what to do with it. And it just became another secret, you know. And there wasn't any place really to talk about those things. Like, it wasn't like I could go home and say, "Hey, Mom," or "Hey, Dad, you know, this happened, and I'm feeling like this, and what do you think?" And it seems like fun, but I got a feeling it's wrong. Oh my God. I don't know where I would have been, but I would have been sent there fast. So, Richardson Avenue, Bronx, New York. Lived here until I was high school, 9, 10, 15. St. Francis of Rome is where I went to grammar school. I had the nuns there, presentation nuns. They had the habit, the big white thing on, and I can still remember their names, I think. Sister Mary Francis, Miss Burns, Sister Mary Phillips, Sister Mary Rose, Sister Mary Brandon, Sister Mary Jane, Sister Mary Sebastian, and Miss Burns again. But the last two might have been switched. And it was 8 years of grammar school. It was like the same day over and over for 8 years. I was in pageants and Christmas plays, and I think, I don't remember. I might have been in, there was St. Patrick's Day and all these other things. And it was a place where everything they taught me, I believed. I just found myself so in love with everything they spoke about, the goodness and God's love, taking care of each other, and being loved by God, being cared for by God, that miracles could happen, and all sorts of wonderful things. And I just was a kid who, for whatever reason, really wanted wonderful things like that. They meant a lot to me. And here's the school. Oh my gosh. Almost drove by it. It used to be so big. We had something called a catechism in those days. The Baltimore Catechism. If any of you are or were brought up Roman Catholic, you will likely remember the Baltimore Catechism, written by Monsignor McGuire. I think it was Francis McGuire. And he was the Monsignor of our church. So he would pop in. This is the rectory where they lived. Nice house, huh? And he would pop in and you'd have to answer questions and do all these other things. And oh my gosh. And it was very strict. I was not a kid that was really made for a classroom, to tell you the truth. I did okay in it, but I really had to force myself. I mean, I heard all the time, pay attention, why don't you pay attention, stop talking, listen, all of those things. The hard part looking back on this was that church, which is around the corner, I just believed it. Everything. And if the teachers, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt because I want to, and I think it's fair. If they were trying to teach a concept or practices in general terms, well then, they did a terrible job of that because it came across as being concrete and literal. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say they did a terrible job because I did get a good education. I did. But in terms of religion and God and what you believe and going to hell and going to heaven and purgatory and limbo and confession every day, and they could have done a better job on explaining that, but maybe they themselves didn't know how to do that. And I think part of that is the big problem that especially queer people have today, is that, at least for me as a queer person, is that all these places I went to school, they left me with having to try and figure out what happened to this God that I thought loved me and went to this God that was sending me to hell, and the people who I thought loved me becoming people that some of them were willing just to exclude me from their lives. It's a big jumble of things I'm still trying to figure out, and I think it's sort of hilarious that at 65 actually at 55 I end up getting ordained as a Presbyterian minister. Out, open, gay, you figure it out. You figure it out. Then you can tell me. So let's go take a look at the front of the church. Hello. So the church that I first attended was down in the basement. And honestly, I loved it. Yeah, you went down and it was just one level at the time. And it was downstairs, and there was darkness to it, and the votive candles would flicker in the red and blue little votive candle holders, and you'd stick $1 in there or a quarter or whatever you could. Once in a while you'd sneak one for nothing. I never did that, of course. But you know, candles gotta burn. And there were pillars, and it was just, I've said this before, I loved the mystery. Loved the mystery. And it was filled with that. It was a place filled with the mystery, and this was built in 1966, so finished in 66, yeah, so how old would I have been? I would have been 15. And I started coming here when I was 6, which was 57, so pretty church. So many of them are pretty churches. It's not the buildings they get wrong. Although one might say that there's better uses for those funds, but one thing at a time. I was an altar boy. I was good too. I remembered all the Latin. So all of this, however it comes out, is sort of to say that my growing up and my education and the schools I went to and the neighborhoods I was a part of from that 1951 when I came into this world, that this early part was really formative, and I believe that everything that I've learned, I needed to learn. And I don't believe that everybody has to learn the same thing again and again and again, that maybe those who learn what they go through can help others. So, I don't know. This is my sort of journey, and I had to unravel all of this and put it aside to get my head back on straight as a gay man. And it wasn't until my late 30s that there were people in my life who were part of faith communities that I met who understood what was going on. Okay. A little bit of a trip around the Bronx, New York. Did I tell you it was in the Bronx? Bronx, New York. That's where we are.